A recent report reveals a huge Penguins update. We're going to tell you who Melvin Fernstrom is, and we're also going to talk about what's next for the Penguins after trading away Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. Kyle Dubas said he is not done yet. He's willing to add. He's willing to subtract. Whatever it takes to get this team back to contention. He has both phones ready to go, and he has been talking to every GM in the National Hockey League, trying to make this team better as quickly as possible. We're going to break it all down for you today on Penguins Digest. If you want to know who Melvin Fernstrom is, stay tuned. If you want to know what Kyle Dubas has planned next, also stay tuned. And if you want to know about tonight's game against the Predators, also stay tuned. We got plenty to talk about on this episode of Penguins Digest. First, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Most of you have not yet subscribed. If you want the latest Pittsburgh Penguins news and updates, subscribe to Penguins Digest and we got you covered. Let's jump right into it because we have a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. The first thing is, this is just the beginning. Kyle Dubas may have broken the seal that's going to lead to the floodgates opening up on the trade front for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He traded Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson to the Vancouver Canucks last night at like midnight, and we did a video about it, breaking the news. Dubas said that the trade calls have increased and that he is willing to spend assets in order to add to what he has already built up in the prospect pool and draft capital. Got another first-round pick last night in the Pettersson trade, something a lot of people didn't expect, but we were able to get that key first-round pick and a prospect in Fernstrom, who we're going to talk about a little bit later. But first, we have to talk about what Kyle Dubas said, because he had a lot to say after these trades. People had a lot of questions. So the Penguins held a press conference, and Kyle Dubas answered every question we could possibly have. We're to start by talking about what he said. Dubas said, "We want to operate as urgently as we can to return the team to contender status. We don't want to buy patience or say it's an X amount of years plan. Our goal is to try to acquire the assets that we've laid out and then either develop those draft picks into players that can help the team quickly, but not expedited to hinder their development, or use those assets to be in the mix when players that can make an impact are present on the trade market and can help us." I think previously, and even this season, it's been tough to get into those conversations because we haven't had that level of assets when a really good young player comes available. Now, having multiple first-round picks and seeing these younger players start to develop gets us more and more into that mix. And so we just have to keep moving down that path. So that's Kyle Dubas' plan. That's how he's laid it out for the Penguins. The Penguins have 29 draft picks in the next 3 seasons. That is absolutely ridiculous. That's the most in the entire National Hockey League. They can use those draft picks to acquire more players. They have the assets to spend that they didn't have before. So Dubas is plotting something big. We don't know what that might be yet, but this is not the end of the moves, is basically what I need you guys to know. There will be more moves coming, and we will be here to report them here on Penguins Digest right as they happen, 100% of the time. What else was said, though? We found out what Kyle Dubas had to say about these trades. What about what Mike Sullivan had to say about these trades? That's an important aspect to all of this because Sully has to coach these guys. Dubas is making trades, shaking up this lineup, giving us a new look Penguins team, and then Mike Sullivan ultimately has to decide who is going to be in the lineup every single day. So that's a decision for Mike Sullivan even tonight. Dubas says that the Penguins can still contend following this trade. Like we just mentioned, he's willing to go out there and spend the assets that he's just built up over the last couple seasons and go and get players that he really wants, players that fit his bill, that fit the mold of what he wants this Penguins team to look like in the future. So Kyle Dubas is not holding back at all, and Mike Sullivan respects what Kyle Dubas has done. He said, "I think Kyle has done a good job at trying to help our group be competitive and at the same time try to get a little bit younger and add some prospects to our overall organization so that we can fill some of the depth. Maybe some of the things have been void over the last little while, but for obvious reasons. To a certain extent, I think that's the cost of winning." What else did Sully say? This is the hard part of the business because when you build relationships with people, it's tough. But this is the business, and it's Kyle's responsibility and prerogative to try to move our team forward. And that's what he's trying to do. Those guys are going to a good place with good people there. We're very familiar with them, and so we wish them well. Marcus has been here for 7+ years, and OC has been here for 5 years or so. They've been a big part of the Penguins for quite some time, certainly in my tenure here. And I think Marcus is just a really good, solid defenseman and a terrific teammate. OC, I think there's another level to his game that is yet to be tapped into. There's an opportunity for Vancouver to try to get that out of him. They've both been very good players here for us. And that really sums it up by Sullivan. I mean, these are two players that were hard to let go of. I was beside myself last night trying to talk about it and analyze it because I didn't know what to say. I really was at a loss for words. But Dubas is not giving up on this team. His goal is still to contend and to expedite the status of these players. The prospects that we're getting are either going to help us really soon or they're going to go somewhere else because these are assets. These are trade pieces that he can use. I firmly believe he's going to flip Danton Heinen as well, whether it's this year or the offseason or next year. Heinen has a lot of teams that would be in the market for him. He's a hot commodity kind of penalty killer guy, bottom six forward. So there's more to come there on that front as well. And we move on to the next topic, which is who is Melvin Fernstrom, a guy that I literally had no idea anything about last night when I started breaking down this trade. I was like, who is this Melvin Fernstrom guy? He's a prospect, right? We have to really look at that aspect of things. We didn't just get players. We got a draft pick, a first-round pick, and a prospect in Fernstrom. And this is a guy that Kyle Dubas has had his eyes on for quite some time. The trade with Vancouver is actually helping move the Penguins forward, getting a guy that they actually wanted in the draft. So this is actually crazy to hear because I was so confused. Who is this guy? Why did Kyle Dubas want him? Well, he handpicked Fernstrom. He actually said, hey, this is a guy that we actually had interest in the draft, and this is exactly what Kyle Dubas said about Melvin Fernstrom. He said, I think the thing that stood out in the draft is that when we interviewed him, he was known as an offensive scoring winger. And we interviewed him, and it was very clear to us that his mindset was in the right spot. His goal for this year was to earn a spot in the SHL, and knowing that role wasn't going to be as a top two-line scorer. And when we watched him this year for Raribo there, he was highly competitive. And as an 18-year-old in their lineup on the fourth line, he scored on the power play. But it's what he's doing in the games competitive. He's chipped in for an 18-year-old. He's got nearly 10 points, and he's been a very good player on the national team in the past. All of these players that you draft have been mostly top-line players or top pair defensemen. Very rarely are you drafting a player from junior who is a lower in the lineup guy that can pop. And it's going to be how they adapt when they're lower in the lineup. Do they bring other elements when they're not scoring, when they're not on the first power play unit? And in his case, that's what he's continued to show. When he was interviewed at the draft, it was like 7 or 8 months ago now, he showed an understanding of what the development path was going to be like and what he was going to have to put into it. And that's what impressed us. So Kyle Dubas was impressed by Melvin Fernstrom, and that's why he's willing to make this type of trade, because it does move the Penguins forward. This is a guy he saw in the Penguins' plans, and he didn't fall to the Penguins in the draft. Vancouver scooped him up. So Pittsburgh had a plan to draft Melvin Fernstrom, and now they're going to get him after all. He has never even appeared in an NHL game. He's still a very green, fresh prospect, and Kyle Dubas got his hands on the guy that he wanted. So this is great for the Penguins, knowing that this is a guy they've already scouted, a guy that they already liked, and now they're getting that same prospect. Former Penguins were traded, so not necessarily Penguins news, but former Penguins news is also shaking up the National Hockey League. Trades in general right now are booming. Every team is trying to make moves. They're trying to make their team better. And we're well before the trade deadline. We haven't even gotten to the Four Nations face-off yet, and these teams are making big moves. And one of those teams is the Dallas Stars. They just had to put Miro Heiskanen on injured reserve, so now they're getting a defenseman, Cody Ceci, to go and play on the back end for them. And they're also acquiring Mikael Granlund, 2 former Penguins, for a conditional first-round pick. And this is just proof that right now, everybody is in on this stuff. Everybody is trying to make moves because the market is exploding right now. Every single team has wants, has needs, has assets to trade away, and they're willing to do what it takes to make their team competitive before the trade deadline. And it's crazy to me that GMs are finally starting to notice, hey, we can make trades before the deadline. We don't have to wait until right up against the deadline to make these trades. Look at some of these moves that have happened just in the last 2 days. I mean, the Flyers trading for Andrei Kuzmenko. They had to give up Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. And then you're seeing the Rangers go and get JT Miller, a guy they really wanted. The Canucks trading with the Penguins for Pettersson and O'Connor. And then Dallas getting Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci earlier this morning. I mean, this is what it's all about, folks. The Penguins are not the only team on the phones right now. And that's why Kyle Dubas is like, I'm not done, because these teams are willing to trade with me right now. Everybody's trying to make trades. Every general manager in the National Hockey League has realized, hey, we can actually do this without pushing up against the deadline and then not getting the pieces we need. When we know what our team needs are, we can go and get them. If we have the assets, if we have the draft capital, we can get whatever we want. and that's what teams are starting to realize. So these are not just regular trades. These are blockbuster trades. I mean, JT Miller, Andrei Kuzmenko, Marcus Pettersson, Mikael Granlund. Like, these are big pieces that are being moved, and this is uncanny for the National Hockey League, and I think it's good for the league. Teams are making decisions earlier in the season, and they're being decisive, and they're going out there and say, hey, we need that player, we're getting that player, whatever it takes, and I love that right now. And that's what it's all about, folks. So I'm just really excited that more is to come for the Penguins. But overall, the whole league is joining in on these sweepstakes right now. And we go to the final aspect of today's video, the new look Penguins versus the Nashville Predators tonight at 7 o'clock. And that's in just a few short hours at this point. So if you guys are still watching this video, the game might have already happened. But I just want to touch on a couple things about the game, and then I'll let you guys go. The first thing I want to talk about is that Alex Nedeljkovic is going to be getting the start tonight for the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Predators. He's going to be going against UC Saros, one of the most talented goaltenders in the National Hockey League. Both of these teams have struggled this season and for different reasons, but it's going to be a competitive game. The Penguins are back home after a really long road trip, and I'm excited to see what they can do back on home ice for the first time in a really long time. And the notes for the game, this is the last element of today's video. Danton Heinen and Vincent Desharnais, recently acquired just last night, each were present in Cranberry but did not practice in the morning skate. So Kyle Dubas said he was uncertain if they were going to be able to participate in the game tonight. The Penguins brought in Heinen and Desharnais in the transaction, giving up Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor to the Canucks. So we don't know if Heinen or Desharnais will play tonight, but we do know that Alex Nedeljkovic will be in net, and the lines are going to look a heck of a lot different without Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson, and things will continue to change. We'll continue to see this revamped Penguins team, this new-look Pittsburgh Penguins team, as Kyle Dubas continues to pull the trigger on big trades leading up to the March deadline. So thank you guys for watching this episode of Penguins Digest. We will see you on the next episode tomorrow here on Penguins Digest. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and you guys take care. Let's go Pens. Beat the Preds tonight.